Hi guys, this is Arkel here, and this time with something I know that a lot of you have been asking about, how to go about coloring with Prismacolor colored pencils. Now if you ever heard me talk about the colored pencils I use, you'll know that I always say how differently they are from traditional colored pencils, and that's really because of the different types of leads they have, and specifically the soft core lead. If you asked me before, you also know that I use two different types of Prismacolor colored pencils. So in this video, I'll be going over each of the two types that I use, the differences between them, and some tips about how to use them. So, okay, let's get started. Alright, the first thing I need to go over is the difference between the two types of Prismacolor pencils that I use. One is called Verithin, and the other goes by many names, but to make things easier, I'll just call it soft core. The best way to tell them apart is by looking at the bottom of the pencil. So as you can see over here, I have the bottoms of the pencils. On the top is the soft core pencil. You can see that the pencil itself is round shaped and has a very thick lead. You can see that. On the bottom is the Verithin pencil, and it has a hexagon shape and it has very thin lead. Now you might already be able to see what that means for the pencils themselves. The Verithin pencils get their name because their lead is literally very thin, and it's also very hard. The softcore pencils are called softcore because their lead is really thick and soft, and pretty much the opposite of Verithin. I can't really stress this enough. Please make sure that if you plan on buying Prismacolor colored pencils, that you know the difference between the two. So alright, now that we can tell them apart, I'm going to get into a little bit about how to use them. So let's move on to how they color. Alright, here you can see that I have two rows of boxes, one red and one blue. The first thing I'm going to be showing you is the difference pressure makes when it comes to coloring with these colored pencils. If you're a digital artist, then you probably know all about drawing with pressure. However, if you're used to using markers or paint, pressure may not mean much to you yet. For those of you who are unfamiliar with this concept, pressure is the amount of force in which you put your hand on your pencil as you draw. The looser and lighter you hold the pencil to the paper, the lighter the pressure you are using. So that means the heavier and more forceful your hand holds the pencil to the paper, the more pressure you are using. To demonstrate how important pressure is, I have these red and blue boxes. In the red box, I'll be coloring one layer of color at the lightest possible pressure I can. It's just to get one uniform layer of color down. And in the blue box, I'll be doing the exact opposite, using the absolute hardest pressure I possibly can. To show how pressure affects the two different hardnesses of Prismacolor colored pencils, I'll be coloring one row with the Verithin and the other row with the soft core. So let's go ahead and start with the soft core first. Alright, so in this first box, I'm just going to be going over with just one layer of color and the lightest pressure I can possibly manage, like I said. So just going to go in here and excuse my messiness. I'm not going for perfection in the lines right now. Alright, so just going over that with one layer. You can see the color lays on pretty grainy and with lots of little holes where the color didn't really stick to the paper. The color itself is also really light. When you use the, light pressure, the wax from the pencil essentially just sits on top of the paper rather than getting pushed into it with hard pressure. So I'll show you what I mean right now. In this next box, I'll be using the hardest pressure I can possibly manage, putting all my strength and force on the pencil as I can without breaking the lead, because that would be bad. We don't want to do that. And it doesn't really matter if you use little circles or lines. It doesn't really matter when you color this hard. So there, that's pretty much the hardest pressure I can possibly manage. When I use the softcore pencils with this really hard pressure, this is kind of the effect that I want to see with my coloring. I don't want to see any kind of graininess or little specks of white. If you want your colors to look smooth as markers, you'll have to use really hard pressure. Basically, what it's doing is the color is getting really pushed into the paper, and it's getting rid of all those tiny little specks. It's getting into the tooth of the paper. It's really like getting into it and not just sitting on top. Alright, and now I'm going to go ahead and use the Verithin pencil and just do the exact same thing. Just one, again, the red box is just one light, very light layer with the lightest pressure I can possibly manage. I'm just going over that box. And you can see here that the graininess is a lot less, and that's because the lead in the pencil is a lot harder and a lot thinner, so it doesn't make all these little patches and stuff, because again the lead is like thinner and stuff, so it won't stick as far out as with the softcore pencil, if that makes sense. And in this blue box, going to do the exact same thing as the other blue box, trying to use as hard pressure as I can possibly manage, again without breaking the pencil in half. Really trying to get rid of all of the little white specks that I can. I mean, I'm really putting pressure on this, like I'm not gonna lie, this, if you color like this for too long, it might start to hurt your hand if you're not used to it. Alright, so there you can see the hardest pressure coloring for the Verithin. And generally speaking, they're really kind of similar. You'll just basically notice that the grain created on this side over here with one layer is a lot smaller than that of the softcore pencils, like I said. But yeah, even so, light pressure you can still see will produce kind of grainy, textured results. And you can still see with the hard pressure that, the result is pretty much similar to the softcore pencils. And honestly, like looking at it like this, you can't really see too much of a difference. And that's really because so long as you've completely got the color into the paper, it won't really make too much of a difference what type of pencil you're using upon first impression. But we'll talk about that in a minute. Right now I just wanted to show you how layering will look with these two pressure levels in mind. So we'll move on to that right now. Alright, and here we have a paper that says pressure and layering colors. And basically what I'm going to be talking about now is, it's pretty much the exact same thing that I did in the last exercise, but basically I'm going to be showing you how I layer colors after I've done those two different pressure levels. And in here you can see that this top row says softcore, and this is using the softcore pencils. So it's basically the same idea as I did last time. You can see that this blue right down under here is the one layer of light pressure in blue. And then over here, like in the same exercise, this is one really hard pressure layer covering the entire box, as hard pressure as possible. And that's the blue. And then what I've done is I've taken this red and the softcore pencil again, and I've just layered it. Layered it one more time. And this is one very light pressure layer on top of that other light pressure layer. And that's what it looks like. And this is the exact opposite. Again, it's the really hard pressure covering it, and then really hard pressure covering it again. And you can see how drastically different this appears just by the pressure difference. How the color will appear, you can see that because there's a lot less blue over here, because it's very soft coloring, this red is much stronger. And down here is the exact same process that I just explained, only with the Verithin. Again, just the blue first, just lightest pressure, covering the entire box, and then the red over that. And then really hard pressure, as hard as I can possibly manage, and then the red on top of that too. And for both of these, this is softcore on top of softcore, and this is Verithin on top of Verithin. So over here, I have something a little bit different. Basically, what I've done is I've done this a few different ways. You can see how they would look if they were kind of interchanged over here. So in this top row, I have Verithin over softcore. So basically, the bottom layer that I've done, the first layer, is going to be the softcore pencil, and then I put the Verithin pencil very thin pencil on top of that. So this is one really light layer, this blue right here is one really light layer of the soft core pencil, and this is a very hard layer. You can see the little H is a very hard pressure layer of the red pencil, the red Verithin pencil over it. So you can kind of see how that looks. Over here is a extremely hard, very hard pressure layer of that blue pencil, and then a sort of light layer of the red and how it kind of appears over that. You can see it's very subtle. And here is the opposite. It's soft core over the Verithin. So the first blue layer underneath is with the Verithin pencil, and these red color over on top of it is with a soft core pencil. So you can see how that's kind of different, especially when you get over here, how much darker it is on top of this color. So this is just some different ways if you want to add some darkness or add different colors into your drawing. This is some different ways that you can go about doing it. There's nothing that says that you have to use a certain type of pencil with another certain type of pencil, or that you can only use soft core with soft core, or Verithin with Verithin. You can see all these different results, and you can really get some very cool effects if you play around with them. So I definitely encourage that. Next thing I want to talk about, this is basically, we're getting into the tips now. The next thing I want to talk about is that blending and layering are different. Now, I know that sometimes we can kind of use these terms to mean the same thing, but in regards to what I'm doing with colored pencils, they are quite different. Now here you can see here, over here, my first example is a blending. Now, basically what I've done is I blended these two colors together by combining them, by putting them through and through each other, putting them on top of each other, going through and back and forth, and really blending them together by using this purplish color here, starting with that, and then using this like teal color over here, and then just merging them together. With the same color, going back and forth and really blending them together, so I get this kind of like dark purplish color in the middle. And so you can remember this easier, just think that this purple plus this teal equals a blend. You're combining them together will get you a blend. Now here I have layering. Now this is not a division symbol, first of all. Basically what you're going to be doing is I'm putting this teal color over this purple. That's basically what it's saying. So you see I've colored this purple all the way down, and then I put the blue on top of it, and that is layering. When you're putting a color on top of another color without blending it together, without getting in around these little side areas and really merging them together, blending them. I'm just putting it on top of it. That is really layering. And again, you're putting that teal color over that purple color. And the next thing I can tell you about too is when you're using blending and layering as a combo. Now see here I started with the exact same process as I did for blending over here, taking this purple and blue color together and sort of merging them together, just blending them all together. And then what I've done is I've layered over yellow on top of them. So for my little equation over here, it will be yellow on top of or over purple plus the teal. So you can see how differently these colors look. These can look, with this yellow over it kind of looks a bit more like earthy toned and not quite so bright as it does over here with the regular blending. So these are just something to keep in mind, that when someone tells you, are you layering color or are you really blending it, there's a big difference. There's just a huge difference. I can't really stress it enough that you really need to know what these mean and kind of how to do them too. I'll explain that in a bit, but these are very different, and that you can create very different effects by doing this. So if you're new to colored pencils, and especially Prismacolor colored pencils, these are some different methods that you can do to create coloring. So yeah, I hope you'll go ahead and use those. And now we're going to get into how to blend with the soft core pencils.